It is the oldest story in the book. Darkness versus the light.
Hey, Mistwood Publishing fans, it's me, SR Mowry, here for the 6th episode of the Servants of Judgment Book Club. Today we will be covering chapters 12, 13, and the first journal of part 2, I believe. I think 14 is part 2, so there we go. Alright, so Feast of Intrigue is chapter 12, and we start out with Baron Stant discussing things with his son, Frederick, when, lo and behold, Mr. Sawyer, John Sawyer, shows up, and that kind of makes the conversation a little bit more interesting. Of course, the first part of the conversation is between Baron Stant and his son. Baron kind of like lying to his son, like, yeah, things are fine, you know, you're young, you have the rest of the meal. It's kind of like this small touch of humanity for him, and we kind of learn, you know, why he's never decorated, and I mean, he's not supposed to be. You're kind of like, well, you're kind of your own problem, dude. You could have made more out of this place, but you decided not to because you decided not to be happy with where you were. And so, like, probably if you were made King of the North, you probably wouldn't make much of that either. You're just one of those professional malcontent guys. But at any rate, Sir John Sawyer shows up, and he ends up kind of going back and forth, and you know where Sawyer lands on things, like, we don't know. We know that maybe he's there for, you know, working for Henry, but maybe he was lying. Like, we don't know for sure. But he ends up basically leading John Stant to believe that he is going to make him King of the North, and that he's actually doesn't support Henry. He doesn't actually support Andrew in the fullest extent. He supports Stant, and that is kind of a testament to how maybe dumb John Stant is, of the fact that he would believe Sawyer even a little bit with this. But you know, sometimes you hear what you want to hear. Yeah, so best start thinking how to decorate Mastiff Rock, King John. And so that kind of like sowing the seeds of dissent and kind of planting very early on seeds that will come to fruition later. Then we have a scene between Henry and Lilith, kind of just building their romantic interest together, why they like each other. Of course, at this point, we know that Lilith has some hidden agenda that she's pursuing. It's not necessarily love. She's maybe putting on an act to a certain degree. But in this section, you know, like, maybe it's not an act. Maybe two things can be true at the same time. Maybe she can genuinely love Henry while also fulfilling her secret mission that we don't fully know what that is yet. We also get a hint of Henry coming out of that basement that we've heard talk of. Will come into play later. And then the next scene, we go back to Sir Torvis and Andrew, and kind of discussing, like, you know, I'm not sure this is the best course to take. Sir Torvis said your uncle and your brother's advisor seems too fond of it. Kind of like, you know, if this advisor saw your character likes it, maybe it's not that great of an idea. Because part of what they discuss is that they needed to have Andrew attack Ravenspire. And of course they're like, well, that's not going to take much convincing. And as you can see from this conversation, it's not going to take much convincing at all. And we get introduced to them discussing this character Rowlog, who, when you read Emerald Knights, which takes place obviously before Saga II, You'll actually get to meet him then as well and get to know him a little bit better there. But just kind of discussing the battle plans a little bit. So then we finish the chapter off with the Feast of Intrigue, which is Lilith and Henry having this conversation about faith and things like that while this raven just is like going ham on this carcass. And it's meant to be foreshadowing. It's meant to be more, and especially Lilith's attention to it. It's meant to be more than just literary, like fancy talk. It is meant to foreshadow. It is meant to be symbolic of maybe their relationship a little bit, at least at this point. We'll see where that goes. In this chapter, just a lot of like kind of building the bond between Lilith and Henry and kind of like understanding why maybe they like each other. And that's really what a lot of Henry's storylines are, is he's more like on the back and Andrew's more on the front lines of their approach to maintaining or gaining power, depending on which side you're on. Then we get to chapter 13, which is the final chapter of part 1, the Marshlands of Orm. And it's a pretty simple chapter. Zack and Hale have left the eastern kingdom of Rasta, and they are making their way through the marshlands, and they are ambushed by a bunch of lifts. They have some pretty deep conversations. A deep conversation before that, where Hale kind of like presses a little bit more into like Zack's stubbornness and his, darkness. Maybe he shouldn't. Maybe he should have. How successful his conversations with Zack can be sometimes. But I really like their discussions. It allows me to explore a lot of really interesting discussions about faith and morality, and it fits because these characters, that's what those characters are. So they end up being captured by an O'Hryn, which is something I came up with in high school. It's basically where a human, to gain more power, basically sells his soul to the devil, essentially. And they slowly start to, I had watched District 9 and I was like, ugh, And so I had the idea, like, well, what if, kind of like how in that movie they, like, slowly turn into those bug aliens, like, what if they, like, slowly turn into, like, some kind of, like, dragon-scaled humanoid monstrosity, and the in-between of that is, like, pretty gross, like it is in District 9. So that's kind of Anhilos, who's going to be their new slave owner. This is really kind of a depressing moment for Zack and Hale, where they were on the right track. That looked like they were going to get there. They were going to get on the boat. They were going to go to Verdurn and maybe somehow find Narbad, but their hopes get dashed out before them as they are taken captive. Really, it might feel random, but this is how Anhelos gets most of his slaves, is through traps like this. So, it's not as crazy or outlandish as maybe they think it is at first, but the last section of the chapter, the last section of part 1, is actually one of the rare times where in a Zack chapter I switched to Narbad's perspective. And it's them arriving at the beach and finding that Valandra is already there. And bada bing, bada boom, she's going to join them. And they have Munra. The next objective is to go get the hammer of Hirskella from the dragon Redegazar the Red. So then we have part 2, the dragon. Makes sense. We have the journal entry where we kind of get Narbad kind of narrating them crossing the sea to the mainland of Verdurn from Evergreen Island. And we also, I saw the journals as kind of an opportunity to tell the stories of the judges. Originally, I was going to make the judges their own like books, almost like how I'm doing Emerald Knights. But I kind of lost interest in that. So I put them here. And honestly, they make for really cool short little journal stories. I in particular find Ehud's to be quite interesting and compelling, and like it also teaches you, well, how did the lifts come about? That we learned from our book conversations with Lyra and the rest in the library before the Bravery of Lyra chapter, or before. And then now we're getting, okay, well, where do Wendigos come from? It's all tied together. You have the 3 judges, the 3 terrors, the three terrors were the first sons of Vandir to come to Fostra on the will of their father Vandir, and the judges were kind of like how in the book of Judges in the Bible, these human figures that God chose to defend and restore what was. Before that happens, though, these terrors, kind of like how orcs are made in Tolkien's world, they take something that was created by Yesu and they, pervert it. And that's how we get the Virar. The good races are the Firar with an F. The bad ones are the Virar, the Lifts, the Wendigos, the Ormriller, the Ohrin, and the Hobgoblins are from taking what was and perverting it. And so yeah, that's a nice little way of doing that, telling that story without doing like a whole book or chapter on it. I feel like it's pretty effective, and I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but I feel like I'm able to draw a connection with this guy just in the story that Narbad says of him being, he was an alcoholic, he lost pretty much everything, all of the judges were like kind of failures and they were chosen anyway, kind of the way God works. And I don't know, it's pretty interesting. And that will do it for episode 6 of our book club. Next time we will do chapters 14, 15, and 16. So keep a lookout for that. Peace out and have a good week.